Call to order, Town of Prescott Valley Regular Town Council Meeting, November 14th, 2024. Welcome, everyone. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Freund. Freund? Yeah, Freund. Councilmember Searcher.
Here.
Councilmember Greer. Absent today. Councilmember Dickinson.
Here.
Councilmember Schumacher.
Present.
Vice Mayor Hunt.
Here.
Mayor Pagoda.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, ma'am. This time, I would like to welcome down Pastor Kendra Hobson from St. Luke's for our invocation and to lead us into pledge. I haven't seen her, though. Is she here? All right. At this time, folks, I just welcome everyone to, let's do a 10-second moment of silence. Thank you. Will you all join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance. Thanks, everyone. On to item number 3, it's our proclamation, and we are doing Homeless Awareness Month.
Homelessness Awareness Month, Agape House of Prescott, November 2024. Whereas Prescott Valley joins the nation in recognizing November as Homelessness Awareness Month. Whereas last year, the Prescott area identified over 150 homeless students, Agape House of Prescott works to reduce the number of homeless families by walking alongside families as they rebuild and turn their lives around. Whereas since its incorporation in 2013, Agape House has an 86% success rate of families living independently 1 year after graduation from Agape House. Now therefore be it resolved that I, Kel Pagoda, Mayor of the Town of Prescott Valley, do hereby proclaim November 2024 as Homelessness Awareness Month and encourage the residents of the Town of Prescott Valley to give back and become involved with Agape House of Prescott in their vision to providing a pathway to independence for families in crisis. Thank you.
Thank you, Fatima. So I'd like to call up Agape House, Coalition for Compassion and Justice, A Safe Place, and also House of Hope. Thank you, guys. So homelessness is very near and dear to my heart. I have recently become a board member of A Safe Place, which is our homeless advocate here, and Mike represents them. And you know, all of these organizations are looking for volunteers. If you have time on your hand, there's a variety of things. You can take people to doctor's appointment, you can go grocery shopping for them, you can donate water, or you could just come in and visit with them and help prepare meals. So there's an array of things that you can do. You can look up any of them. You can call me personally on my cell phone or reach out to me on Facebook and I can connect you. And so I think Mike is here to say a few words in general about homelessness in Prescott Valley.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Lori? I represent many groups here today, so it's not a problem that one group is going to do. Agape, we work with families. We have groups that work with seniors. We have groups that work with drop-in, groups that work emergency shelter with men and women on both sides of the town here. But the problem's not getting better, but it is something that we can make a big dent in as a community. My organization won't solve it. Lori's won't solve it, each one, but working together we do appreciate the town working with us. It's something that people across the land, it's terrible. Up here, it's workable. So thank you very much for doing that. I appreciate our partners here in working with us.
And we're going to get a picture. I've said repeatedly, and I will say it again, and we're going to be discussing the zoning code and potential attainable housing avenues. But I'll say it again, I think this community needs a homeless shelter, a very small homeless shelter, to get some of our friends off of the street, especially when it gets cold like now. So we're going to go ahead and get a picture. If you guys want to come on this side?
Where the yellow dot is.
Oh, that's perfect.
Is the center. That way we don't have to. Just me. You didn't have to move. You're good. You're good. You're good. All right, ready? 1, 2. Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys. Next up, student of the month. Clap.
So this is the next thing that's very near and dear to my heart, are the kids in Prescott Valley. So the town of Prescott Valley, in collaboration with the Optimist Club of Yavapai County and Bradshaw Mountain High School. Go Bears. Go Bears. Are honoring our 2 outstanding students for October. Welcome Chesney. Say that again? Cherhoniak and Colton Woolley. So we are recognizing Chesney and Colton for their school and community engagement because of their hard work. They have been nominated by their school staff and instructors at Bradshaw Mountain High School. Congratulations. So we are going to ask you two, Chesney and Colton, to tell us a little bit about yourselves. And then we're going to hear from the most amazing high school principal in the whole northern Arizona, my friend Rick Bradshaw, and Optimist Club member Michael Whiting. So Chesney, could you please start, and then we'll have Colton go.
Throughout all of high school, I've been involved with the marching band. I play the alto saxophone and have been playing it for almost 10 years now. At Bradshaw Mountain, I have had the honor of being the alto saxophone section leader for 3 years now, while also maintaining good grades with school. I have academically been able to maintain a GPA of 3.98 and have been one of the top kids in my class. I am ranked 13 out of 402. Along with marching band, I also participate in concert and jazz band. I'm one of the lead players for both and have had the opportunity to play multiple ballad solos for jazz band. On top of that, I have also done Winter Guard with the Granite Mountain Marching Arts. During my high school career and this year, I'm trying something new with the Granite Mountain Marching Arts program called Winter Winds. These programs all take an immense amount of time and commitment, but that doesn't mean I must maintain good grades if I want to be able to perform with these organizations. I've taken pre-AP and AP classes during high school and was able to pass 2 AP tests I took in May this year. So thank you for this amazing award of Student of the Month. I greatly appreciate it and will always cherish this award.
Good evening, everyone. I'm truly honored to be named Student of the Month. This recognition reflects the incredible support from my peers and my family. As a student with passion for science and technology, I've strived to challenge myself academically, achieving a 4.6 weighted GPA while taking numerous AP and dual enrollment courses at Yavapai College. I'm actively involved after school, serving as president of the Science Olympiad team and president of the Mathematics Club. I'm also a link leader, helping younger students acclimate to high school, founding member of the Engineering Club, and part of the National Honor Society. My involvement in these extracurriculars has fueled my curiosity and allowed me to work and collaborate with my peers. In my free time, I like to cook, play video games, play chess, and spend time with my family. Through tutoring math and volunteering after school, I've learned the importance of hard work and giving back to my community. As I look towards the future, I'm excited to pursue an education in astrophysics and aerospace engineering, and striving for excellence in all that I do. I'm grateful for this recognition and opportunity to represent my school. Thank you.
Mr. Bradshaw.
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor Palguda, Town Council, for this wonderful night. It's always my favorite to come celebrate our students, especially the tall ones, because this microphone's tough on us tall people. But no, the great students, as you see, they're active in school. They do a lot in school. Their GPAs are outstanding. I can't even describe how good these kids are. They just work hard. They take their academics seriously. They always do. But on top of that, they are involved in school and they help our other kids. Colton's part of Link, and it helps our freshman students, and that's a big thing we do for our freshman kids. But thank you again for everything, and appreciate it.
Well, we do have, I'm going to speak closer to the mic, so we're going to have to instruct our shy students next time to talk a little closer to the mic so they can hear you. But if you heard or barely heard, these students have done or have gone beyond expectations in terms of what's expected at Bradshaw Mountain High School, and that's why they're here today. And we want to celebrate that. Chesney and Colton, Student of the Month is just one of the rewards as a result of your personal commitment and hard work in your journey at Bradshaw Mountain High School. We know that this is the beginning of further achievements and personal growth through new opportunities, and we know you're going to pursue other opportunities, and we know you'll be very successful. Whether you pursue a career that takes up a trade or continue your education to college, we're hoping for the University of Arizona, just a hint, or vocational or technical school. Obviously, you both are ready or you wouldn't be here tonight. And we'd like to say a little thank you too and acknowledge the people who've been involved with the growth and excellence that both Chesney and Colton have achieved. And that is not only the staff and faculty at the high school, but also their parents. And I know parents are here tonight, and rather than ask you to come up, we'll just ask you to stand up so we could, all of us, give you a round of applause. So please stand up. So it's with sincere pleasure that we congratulate you on behalf of the Optimist Club of Yavapai County, Prescott Valley Council, or Council of Prescott Valley, and Bradshaw Mountain High School. And we'd like to give you just a little memento to recognize this evening's honor. And that's simply by giving you a couple of items that you can either hang on your wall or keep with you as you further your education or your vocational aspirations in the future. So I'll ask Lori to pass those out to our students. Thank you. And I'll read what it says on the certificates. It's short and sweet. Optimist Club of Yavapai County, in partnership with Bradshaw Mountain High School in the town of Prescott Valley, certify to all at Chesney and Colton have been named November Students of the Month. So once again, we congratulate you. And I wanted to also, since the Optimist Club is involved with this, we as club members around the country and around the world operate on what's called an Optimist Creed. There's about 10 tenets in terms of things that we try to live to and live for. And I'm going to give you a copy. And if you can look at this and now and then when you have a tough time, this might help you get through some of that. And one thing, I just want to give you one of the 10 tenets that we try to live by, and hopefully it'll give you an idea what optimism is all about. To give so much time to the improvement of yourself that you have no time to criticize others. That's a good one, I think. So, well, once again, one last round of applause for our Students of the Month.
Thank you.
The typical dad right here just rolls up, not doing anything, just standing there.
Thank you very much.
Good job, Mom. Next up, call to the public. At this time, members of the public may comment on matters listed on the agenda or solely on matters within the jurisdiction of the town. Any persons wishing to address the council must register their name with the town clerk prior to the commencement of the meeting. The council's response is limited to responding to criticism, asking staff to review a matter commented upon, or asking that a matter be put on a future agenda. Such remarks shall be limited to 3 minutes unless additional time is granted by the mayor. And for those of you new to the process, when you have 30 seconds left, you will hear and then at the end of your 3 minutes, you will hear multiple rings, and that is your time to start wrapping things up. But you can always request for staff and/or council to set up an appointment or a meeting with you to speak longer in regards to your issue. With that being said, clerk?
So the first 4 names that I'm going to call: Patricia Betzold, Sandy Graham, Steve Carrows, and Tom Steele.
We'll go ladies first. So gentlemen, you're going to be fine seated right there. Welcome, ma'am.
Patricia Betzel, representing Stop Lakeshore 650. For the time being, the town continues to make decisions that we don't agree with. Tonight's agenda is an example of that. Item 10G, the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021 funds, was intended as an economic stimulus bill to speed up the country's economic recovery from the effects of COVID. How does this apply when we use these funds on parks and the library? How does that help our economy? It doesn't. There are other things the town could have done. For example, helping the small businesses along Route 69 to improve their appearance that might have affected the desired outcome. Item 10E, the Town Code Chapter 13 zoning tonight. This is another instance where the town is disingenuous or dishonest. The town is hiding a major change in our zoning code under the guise of, quote unquote, making the code easier to understand. They're holding the first public hearing tonight to approve building additional dwelling units, ADUs, in their backyards. Things that would increase our traffic, increase the stress on infrastructure, consume more water, increase crime, without asking the public, the property owners of PV, what they think. How in the world can anyone interpret this as making the code easier to understand? This is a massive change to our code. Item 10D, Jasper. Most of the current council, with the exception of our 2 new people, approved this massive over 3,500 unit residential development back in 2019. Tonight, they're going to finish the job. And what they're approving tonight isn't really that big of a deal. However, what's disturbing when you read the original ordinance is that the town at that time felt that this massive development was compatible with our future planned Glassford Hill Regional Park and its wildlife, that it was compatible with the circulation network in town, even though they demanded a 4-lane highway be built behind a lot of people's existing homes without any regard for the protests that elicited, without any protection for wildlife or people. It's just an open 4-lane highway with no stops. And that they also said that there was availability of public utilities, and then built a new water tank that cost us millions. The bottom line is we look forward to the day we can trust in our local government. But tonight, the key thing is the Lakeshore 650 call of election. Stop Lakeshore 650's emphasis is on allowing people the right to vote whether or not they want this development. But we have a criticism. We want to understand who approved the investment of our tax dollars to hire a legal firm to support an increase in the number of signatures required on the referendum.
Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to start wrapping it up, or I'm sure we'll see you next time.
Yes, 5 seconds. Who hired the legal firm, who approved the funding, and what was the town actively opposing the citizens of PV in favor of supporting an applicant, and who ultimately approved these legal actions. This is considered a criticism, and we'd like an answer. Thank you.
All right, thank you, ma'am. Those are like football seconds.
I can't count.
All right, thank you, ma'am.
This was a criticism that requires a response.
Thank you, ma'am.
No? Okay.
Clerk, next name.
Okay.
And Sandy?
Welcome, ma'am.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, and staff. I'm Sandy Graham, a Prescott Valley resident. Water is life. The first time I heard that phrase, I was in the saddle with my great-grandfather checking cattle in the irrigation ditches. I grew up with knowing how precious water is, how important it is to life, and was taught to conserve. I was seriously surprised to discover that Prescott Valley does not have water, conservation, education, and incentives to decrease water use. There are no guidelines or mandates regarding only native, drought-tolerant plants are to be used in new development and replacement of vegetation. I have been able to see that the past decision makers of the town chose to put water credits as first and foremost when the water treatment plant was designed and built. Earning and selling these credits was a high priority without regard to safe yield. With this structure in place, no planning was done to use affluent water for firefighting, as well as other affluent water uses that towns and cities across the United States utilize. I'm also aware that water credits, also known as paper water, does not come out of anyone's faucet. Using water credits to say that a developer can prove they have a 100-year supply of water defies all common sense. As several know, the aquifer we share with many isn't in safe yield, and we live in the worst performing water district in the state. Hiring lobbyists to convince lawmakers that safe yield doesn't need to be achieved doesn't help the water level in the aquifer, and it's not a solution to the problem. Building more roofs will only contribute to taking more out of the aquifer daily. I encourage the town of Prescott Valley to strongly consider putting a water conservation education program into place as soon as possible. Better late than never. Thank you.
Steve Carroll.
Welcome, sir.
My father was a tournament poker player back before you could watch such tournaments on television. When he taught me how to play, he made it clear to watch out for those who were playing with other people's money. Those were the ones who bluff the most. I have heard the town manager express concerns regarding our town's revenue income. But where is the concern for the town's revenue outgo, especially since most of this money is made up of tax dollars? It is with this in mind that I'm voicing my objection to the continual decisions and actions of the town attorney that allow so many tax dollars to be inappropriately and grossly misspent. The town attorney's recent interpretation of law leading to the quadrupling of the number of votes required on the Lakeshore 650 referendum petition was clearly such a bluff by a player using other people's money, that being the taxpayers of Prescott Valley. This bluff is costing a lot of money, and it was a huge embarrassment. The town attorney apparently didn't think the little people of Prescott Valley would call his bluff, but they did. No other explanation other than gross incompetence can be convincing in the matter of these actions. It was pure politics, but the role of town attorney is absolutely a fiduciary responsibility position. Yet he continues year in and year out to fail in this role. It is time to offer Mr. Legler a retirement date in lieu of termination for cause with loss of pension.
Next up,
Tom Steele.
welcome, sir.
Most of you know me, and you know that I've been concerned about our water situation for a long time. Since the first of the century, since 2000, our water resources from Mother Nature has dropped 28%. And yet, between 2000 and 2022, the town population has doubled. Now, that by itself doesn't make any real sense, and that does not include between 21, 22, and 23. Most of you have already approved an additional 3,000, almost 3,000 new living units that aren't even occupied yet. So recently, I've been hearing about some consultants, and I think 3 consultants are on your calendar to be approved on the consent calendar, are all to deal with water and water reclamation. Well, as it turns out, I got concerned about this because everybody's water bill went up $3 a month quite some time back. So I got to looking at some figures from the town budget, and I see that our town manager has seen fit to hire 5 people in the stormwater department. Well, actually 3 are in the department, 2 are additional people to Streets Division of Public Works. Further digging tells me that these 5 people are costing the town in excess of $320,000 a year. Now, a few weeks ago, I called the director of this stormwater, and I asked her, I said, well, I'd like to see some plans on what is being developed to retain this water. And she said, well, the first thing we have to do is assure that the water is safe and passes federal economic EPA standards. I said, okay. So a little later, then I said, well, I haven't seen anything, so how about giving me a report? I called her a week ago, and I said, give me a report and explain to me how this has to work. And I've yet to get that information from her. So I'm just asking you, we get a storm maybe, what, 5 or 10 days a year, and we're going to be paying $320,000 for people that have to collect the samples, send them out to be tested, because we're talking about billions of parts per factor for these chemicals. By the time that gets back, our stormwater is going to be down in Maricopa County. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
The next 4 names are Karen Rolls, Tim Reynolds, Luis Weeks, and Lucy Leyva.
Welcome, ma'am.
Hi. I hate public speaking. Let's start with that. Mr. Mayor, council, and town staff, my name is Karen Rawls. Due to my husband's career, we lived in 8 states and multiple cities. I've been in Arizona for 26 years, 10 of those in Prescott Valley. I could live anywhere, but I choose to live in Prescott Valley because I love it here. I appreciate the mayor, the town council, and the town staff for all they do. I appreciate the library and the Parks and Rec Department for all the amazing programs. I appreciate the town hall staff for answering my questions, whether I contact them by phone or email. I consider it a privilege to be a town volunteer. No matter the assignment, the staff always expresses their appreciation. So basically, I'm saying something you don't hear enough. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Mayor and council members, I want to talk a little bit about the Lakeshore 650 vote. I've emailed everyone up there already, so you probably have an idea what my opinion is. It's very unfortunate for such a compressed time for you to decide when this vote should be held. Voters really haven't had much chance to voice their opinion to you. It's unfair to you because you've had a very, very short time to try and gather the pulse of the voters on when we would like this election to happen. Plus, all the dates really they have all pluses and they all have minuses. There is no, this is the obvious one to take. So it's not going to be an easy vote. But talking to the people I've been to and known for the last year or so and mulling over the advantages, disadvantages, whatever you want to call them, over all the dates, I think the fairest date to vote would be the May 2025. That would be the fairest for all parties. This has an added benefit. For next year, the new council, this will give them a direct view whether they approve the development or disapprove the development. It'll give the council members an idea, what does the voting public want when it comes to growth in Prescott Valley? Do we continue on with these large 10,000 plus people developments? Do we stop and slow our growth down a little bit? Get an idea of how to solve a lot of the issues we have, whether it's the water, infrastructure, the road network and all that. Do we slow things down, find solutions that are workable, and then maybe look at growing at a faster pace later? So again, I just ask, when you do this, my vote would be May of 2025. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Welcome, ma'am.
Sure if I'm in the right order. Good evening, everyone. My name is Louise Weeks. I'm a resident of Prescott Valley, and more importantly, a member, well, not more importantly, I am a member of the public. And
Louise, can you put the mic closer to you?
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, there we go. I just wanted to preface what I'm going to say with that we have the right to expect that the board follow open meeting law and board policies. We have the right to attend and listen. We have the right to record and/or audio so long as we do that in an unobtrusive manner. And I also recognize that the board can choose to have no public comment for all meetings or some meetings. And with that said, I do appreciate the opportunity to be able to speak. I'm a little bit uncomfortable by some exchanges I've seen out on socials, as well as this short exchange that I've am aware of with Councilman-elect and Mr. Davidson, beginning October 22nd. And the Councilman-elect wrote that regarding the council retreat to be held January 3rd, he said, I hope I can assume that only the moderator and council will be attending the retreat. Mr. Davidson replied that that would violate the open meeting law and that the public isn't able to attend, just like any other meeting. There's an agenda, and so then he was told by that council-elect, a public retreat is a mistake. If you are familiar with how they work, unnecessary attendees stifle participation. Perhaps you've been in government too long. The reply then was state law does not allow the council to have a retreat in private. Open meeting law prohibits that type of activity. The council member-elect then continued with ICMA policies, papers say it can be done, just call it a closed-door executive session. ICMA says things can be uncomfortable in front of members of the public, and that includes a news reporter. And the email exchange ended with, state law only allows executive sessions for certain discussions, and general retreat is not one of the listed items. If council needs to discuss a legal issue, they can go into executive session. This is all relating to ARS 38-431.03 parentheses A. So what I would like to know is how much time and money we're going to be spending on these continued interruptions and disruptions, because as a member of the public, I want to attend and see what's going on. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Welcome.
Hi everyone. Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Council. I'm Lucy Leiva, former council member. It's an honor to be here. I came before you to bring attention to, in my opinion, a very radical and disturbing behavior of a Prescott Valley Town Councilman-elect. Last week, this councilman-elect posted a picture of the mayor's home on social media, as well as sent through email, with a comment that said, here's a mayor's $1 million ditch house. We don't have a flash flood in the forecast, do we? This councilman-elect has also commented about a potential conflict of interest regarding a local contractor, and even implied that illegal activities were happening between the contractor, the town of Prescott Valley staff, and the mayor. If this self-proclaimed investigative reporter has evidence of anything illegal, then I demand that he file a police report. Otherwise, these kinds of posts and accusations should stop. The town voted for a professional representative of the town council, not an individual who spends precious time creating drama and making the staff jobs even harder than what already is. When I was serving my term as a councilwoman and representative of our town, I was always respectful of everyone's jobs, and not only that, I was doing something to make our town better by creating harmony and moving things forward. Instead, what we see here is someone who is doing the exact opposite. Each one of you on the council right now, and as we speak, should feel embarrassed at the behavior this individual is displaying. I will hope that this person is acting alone on these bizarre behaviors. Perhaps your strategy is to simply ignore the behavior and ramblings. However, the citizens of Prescott Valley deserve much better. The fact that this investigative reporter has posted the mayor's house several times and was even seen taking pictures of the mayor's children playing should be concerning to every parent and grandparent. This is borderline criminal. I will be very scared of having anyone taking pictures of my house or my children, regardless if these pictures are exposed publicly or not. Just the fact that someone is taking these pictures maliciously and have these pictures of my house and my family absolutely scares me. Why would someone go out of their way to travel to the mayor's neighborhood and take these pictures? We won't make assumptions here. This is just not okay, period. We all may not agree on things all the time, but I would like to think that we all can see the behavior along with several other behaviors displayed by this person show that this councilman-elect is not the best example of what a representative or amazing town should look and act like. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Moving on to item 6, council communications. And as I've said before, normally I don't comment during this portion. I usually leave it up to council. But our community, and I say our community, not just a few families, suffered a tragic accident this past week. A 14-year-old bicyclist was killed on Viewpoint. And I just want to extend my condolences, the council's condolences, and the town of Prescott Valley's condolences to this family. I hope that each of you say an extra special prayer tonight, because I cannot imagine the heartbreak that that family felt. So please just take a moment, say an extra prayer tonight, and hope they have healing. Thank you. Councilman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to announce that Monday, November 25th is the Flying High Turkey Drive. That is an event that is sponsored by the Prescott Valley Chamber of Commerce, Town of Prescott Valley, Central Arizona Fire Medical, and a lot of other sponsors. Proceeds of the Flying High Turkey Drive benefit the Up by Food Bank. And it's one of my favorite events because I get to dress up like a turkey. So I do definitely want to just, get that information out there. It's from noon to 6 p.m. at the Fry's here in Prescott Valley. Again, the Flying High Turkey Drive. Thank you.
Vice Mayor.
Thank you for your comments. I would like to invite everybody to the Wizard of Oz tomorrow night at 6:30 at our high school, the Bradshaw Mountain High School. It's actually going to be held at the old Gloucester Hill Middle School, but they're performing Wizard of Oz at 6:30 tomorrow. And on Saturday, there's also a matinee. So I encourage you all to attend because our high school drama team works very hard on that. And then also at 4 p.m. on Saturday at Harkins Theater, we are going to be ribbon cutting our very own giving machine in Prescott Valley. Historically, they've just been in Prescott, but they're coming to Prescott Valley this year. I'm very excited that Coalition for Compassion and Justice is one of the charities in this year's giving machine. And then at 7 p.m. Saturday night, the 16th, There is a huge hockey game between Grand Canyon University and University of Arizona at Findlay Toyota Center at 7 p.m. So I encourage you all to attend that. Tickets are about $25. It's going to be very fun. We need to show our support of hockey if we ever want to have another hockey team in Prescott Valley. So there's going to be all kinds of scouts from all over at that game, and they need to see that people want to see hockey if we're going to have another hockey team here. Thank you.
Councilwoman.
So this is my personal opinion, and it has nothing to do with being on the council, or I'm not representing the council in any way. I just wanted to say that with social media today, it's a different atmosphere. And I just want to ask everybody to please be careful who you're listening to. And just because somebody makes a statement doesn't make it be truth, just because it's put out onto social media. And so I kind of wanted to say the saying of you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. It's amazing how opinions can come out, but the hatred is really hard to know what to do with. And when I was a child, we were taught to respect the office. Whether or not you liked who was sitting in it was a different matter, but you respected the office. And I think that that has gone by the wayside. So we hear a lot of things about Lakeshore 650, that this is a horrible idea somehow. But when you're a builder and you're trying to make a dream come true and something to come to fruition with the money you're going to invest on a property that you own, I want you to consider that if we don't do what their plan is, there may have been another alternate plan. There could be another side to the story. So if we don't annex them on and take them in and have water be provided by the town, that means they're going to have their own wells. If we don't provide sewer systems, that means they're going to be having septic systems. Because this is a county property, they're approved for what they want to do with it as a county property. It would be much better if it came forward with being a property within the town limits. We'd be getting a beautiful park with a soccer field. It would be turned over to the park, but it's at the expense of the development that's going to go forward. If it remains county, that doesn't happen. So it's not like when we're up here making decisions that we're eliminating what the options are. It means that there's other options available to those people. And that's what I want you to consider. So just be careful who you listen to, and that's just my personal advice. So thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Davidson.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, several positive things tonight. So first, our monthly report for October is available online. So if you have any questions about any of the items contained within the report, please let me know, and it's available to our public. But I want to take a moment to recognize a couple of our teams tonight that are doing some outstanding work on behalf of all of our residents. And first, our new neighborhood services code enforcement team has recently been recognized with a statewide recognition. And so I'm going to have our director and our code enforcement team come up. Director Robinson, if you will kind of talk a little bit about the team, what the award is, and we'll go from there.
Absolutely. Thank you so much to our mayor, members of council, to our town manager, to members of the public. Let me turn this way. I cannot express enough how extremely excited I am about the work that this team has done over the past couple of months leading up to this award. They actually received an award from CELA, which is the Code Enforcement League of Arizona. They were of course, the team that won the award for this year. That is a very robust competition amongst all of the different code departments throughout the state. They have put a lot of work in terms of changing how we operate, process, procedure, looking at how we communicate with the public in terms of educational programs and things of that nature. I know it's a little dark outside, but if you happen to go in the parking lot, you'll even see the new neighborhood toolbox that has recently been rewrapped. with the QR codes and everything so that we can, of course, provide those resources to the public. But this team of gentlemen right here they've worked extremely hard. And so I could not be more elated. In the past year, they have obtained all of their certifications through CELA. They're in the process right now of getting their certifications through ICC, which is the International Code Council. And so I think this community can be extremely proud of the work that they're doing and the work that they are anticipating doing in the next coming year. So thank you so much.
Thank you, you
Get a
guys.
picture.
Outstanding job. Nope. Picture, yeah, get a.
They're telling us to take pictures.
It's like the equivalent of like the Code Enforcement Olympics you guys won, right? Is that what it is? Like if there was a pedestal, you guys would be standing there.
Yes, that's the center. So Stephanie. That's the middle.
I take back everything I said about you guys. One more time for these guys.
I want to thank them. That is a tough job. Code enforcement is not something that is an easy profession to be in. So you're going up to someone's home and having to let them know that they may be in violation of the code, and sometimes they don't always like to be told that. And so our team often hears different comments, and they work through those comments and are very professional. But they care deeply about this community, and I thank them for the work that they're doing. Our second team, and this team is, they're extreme introverts, so they don't want to come up, but they're our finance team and our accountant team. We just recently received notification, again from the state, that we've got what's called the Triple Crown Award, I believe. So it's the trifecta of finance awards. So first, we got the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting. We received the Outstanding Achievement in Popular Annual Financial Reporting. And then thirdly, we received the Distinguished Budget Presentation Award. So if we could recognize our finance team for the outstanding job that they do to manage that. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor and Council.
Thank you, sir. Next up, consent agenda. All matters listed under consent agenda are considered routine by the town council and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items. If discussion is desired, that item will be removed from the consent agenda and will be considered separately. Council, we've all had a chance to review our packet. And if there's an item to be removed, now is the time. If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I would like to make a motion to approve the consent calendar as presented by electronic vote, and also congratulate Ted Erb for his reappointment to the Planning and Zoning Commission.
I second it.
Clerk, please call the vote.
Councilmember, thank you. That passes unanimously, Mayor.
Thank you, ma'am. Next up, item 9A, Town Code Urban Camping Restriction on Public-Private Property. Consideration of possible action. This is the second reading. Lieutenant, welcome. Council, we've had a chance to review this and we've spoken in depth in regards to this. Are there any additional questions for the lieutenant prior to the second reading? Seeing none, clerk.
Ordinance number 2024-946, an ordinance of the mayor and common council of the town of Prescott Valley, a municipal corporation of Arizona, enacting Town Code Section 10-1-180, urban camping, and Article 10-1, offenses of Chapter 10, offenses, providing that all other chapters, articles, and sections of the town code not herein amended shall remain in full force and effect, providing that if any provision in this ordinance is held invalid by a court of competent jurisdiction, the remaining provisions shall not be affected, but shall continue in full force and effect, and providing that this ordinance shall be effective 30 days after its passage and approval according to law.
Clerk, shall this ordinance pass?
Councilmember Freund? Thank you. That passes unanimously.
Thank you, ma'am. Next up, item 10A for new business, Series 12 liquor license for Calaveras Bar and Grill. Consideration and possible action. This is also a public hearing, which we are opening right now. Ms. Greenwood, welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. Miguel Ruben Flores Calderon, agent, filed a new application for a Series 12 restaurant liquor license on behalf of Cavalera's Bar and Grill located at 8164 East Spouse Drive. A copy of the license was posted for the required 20-day notice, and we have received no comments in favor of or opposed to the issuance of the license. It is recommended that the Town Council recommend approval of the application to the Arizona Department of Liquor License and Control. Thank you.
As I mentioned, this is a public hearing. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak on this item? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. Council, any questions or comments for Ms. Greenwood? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to recommend approval of the Series 12 liquor license on behalf of Calavera's Bar and Grill located at 8164 East Spouse Drive to the Arizona Department of Liquor License and Control by electronic vote.
Can I have a second?
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
Clerk, please call the vote.
Vice Mayor Hunt? Thank you. That passes unanimously, Mayor.
Thank you, ma'am. Next up, call of election referendum petition R-01-2024 Lakeshore 650. Ms. Fernandez.
Yes. So good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members. Tonight I've prepared a PowerPoint presentation to go over this agenda item that relates to the referendum petition that was circulated in town. Just for a little fun fact, the last referendum petition in the town of Prescott Valley was in 2007, related to the Walmart here on Glassford Hill and Lakeshore. So, just to give you a little bit of background on this referendum, I guess you can say it started on September 12th when the town council approved the ordinance number 2024-938, sorry, that would annex 652 acres of land near Fane Road and Lakeshore 650 into the town of Prescott Valley limits. So this was to annex the land into the town of Prescott Valley. The following day, on Friday the 13th, my office received an application for a serial number for that referendum petition, which started the process for the referendum. On October 10, the Stop Lakeshore 650 PAC submitted their required signatures, and then we also started the process for verifying those signatures. And then on November 7, a disposition receipt was issued to all interested parties, those being the town council, the Stop Lakeshore 650 Political Action Committee, and the applicant for the annexation, letting you all know that the number of signatures filed in my office were sufficient for the referendum to be placed on the ballot in the manner provided by law. What does the law have to say? Well, we first looked at the Arizona Constitution, which allows cities and towns to prescribe the manner of exercising the powers of initiatives and referendum within the restrictions of general laws. Our town code also states that any initiative or referendum matter may be voted on at the next ensuing primary or general election or at a special election called by the council for such purpose. So tonight we're here because the council will need to determine whether to call a special election or put the matter before the voters at the next ensuing primary election in 2026. I've did a comparison for both elections to compare services and cost. As stated in your staff report, whereas Title 16 indicates that special elections, or actually any type of election, can only be held in the following consolidated months, which is in March, May, August, or November. So whether you have a special election or you're in your regular cycle for elections, you can only have elections in March, May, August, and November. So being that if the council was to call a special election, the next upcoming available timeframe would be that May 20th. If you compare, you would only have one ballot question at that time in May. And the total estimated cost, I did my best trying to pull the numbers, would probably be about 89,000. You have to keep into consideration that I'm only calculating as of the 31,542 actual registered voters that we have this past election in August. There's a fee for the creation of that publicity pamphlet. And for a special election, the services provided would only be for a mail ballot election and just the ballot drop box, meaning you wouldn't have any early voting locations or polling places or vote centers at that time, as of right now. If the council was to choose the election in August of 2026, you'll notice that I put a little asterisk right next to that date because this last election, they changed the date from August to July, so I don't have an actual date, but I am sure it's not going to be, a weird date. It could be July. For that election or regular election cycle, we would have our mayoral race or council member race and that referendum or that any other ballot question, costing $163,000 about. Just so you know, I want to point out that this primary election is something that will happen. This is the price we're going to pay regardless, whether you put the referendum, on the special election, because we will have to have an election in August. With the election in August, we will have more amenities and services like the early voting locations, polling places, again, the ballot drop box, and you would also have the ability for the mail ballot election. And the reason of doing this tonight is because we have to let the county know before November 21st, 5 p.m., of our decision whether we will be participating or not in May. It is a requirement. It's called the 180-day requirement per state statute that we, anytime an election comes up, we let them know whether we have something or not for the ballot. If the council decides to call an election in May, my office would need to start doing some of those processes, like publish the call of election, work on the publicity pamphlet, gather pro-con arguments, start collaboration with Yavapai County, and so on. If the election is called in for that August 4th, 2026, then all of those steps will just be done at a later time. Any questions?
Ma'am, before I start discussion with council, confirming that primary August 4th, 2026 is the latest. There's no general November option.
There is a general November option.
There is a general. So the latest it could be would be a November and then everything in between.
As long as it is within those consolidated dates, March,
Okay.
May, August, November. August, November would be a regular election cycle.
And November's a regular election cycle. Okay, thank you, ma'am. With that being said, I'll open it up to council with comments and questions.
I have questions.
Vice Mayor, go ahead.
So I think what I heard you say, that having it August 4th, 2026 will be more affordable, even though this looks like it's more expensive because we pay this amount anyway to have an election because we're going to have council members in this primary.
Correct. So the price that you're paying in August or November will have to be spent regardless. Because we have more amenities with the early voting, vote centers, the rate for that election is $4.60. There is a discount that the county gives us, but I wouldn't be able to tell you how much that is as of right now, because it depends on, it's a shared cost. But yes, that election in August will have to be spent regardless. So technically, you would spending more money if you called an election in May.
So because we're just adding one more question on an already existing town ballot for town council.
Right, we don't pay based on questions, we pay based on participation,
Okay.
if that makes sense.
Because probably in this July primary, we spent about 150,000, right?
We did.
Okay. So we're talking maybe $16,000 to hold it in, to ask that extra question, even though it doesn't go by the question.
Right, so
Okay.
technically, let's say you only had the mayoral race and the council member race, no ballot questions, your only savings then would be the publicity pamphlet, which is that $18,000.
Council, we have additional questions, comments? Councilman?
So, on this, on the primary, if there's a good possibility that the mayor and council members running could win, and that they would not move on to the general election. And what I'm thinking is, it says other here, other propositions possibly would be on there that, what would be other?
Right, we don't know, it could be home rule again, it could be a tax, I mean, I don't know, tax question bonds, I don't know. I just like to leave that open in case we do have to put something on the ballot at any point.
But
Like
we
this
could-
referendum,
we
could be an
finished.
initiative, could be another referendum, who knows?
Oh, that's true, yeah. We could feasibly be finished in August of any election.
Right.
But if we had the referendum in November, would there, the cost be, what, have you any idea what that would be if it was just the referendum and whatever is under other?
So the reason why I put it under the primary to calculate the cost is because we have many variables. What if there is a runoff at the general election, then that cost is also already included. If that makes sense.
Oh,
So
I
I can't
see.
really pull a cost for November to tell you how much that would be. But I'm estimating, I don't know, the $4.60 per registered voter.
If I could interject a moment, I believe in the past, hasn't council or staff, we've discussed a permanent home rule vote, or at least going to the voters. Would that be something that would be consistent with going in November?
Mr.
Davidson.
Mayor, members of the council, yes, we have talked about that at the previous study session where we're going over home rule and then the permanent base adjustment. So that could be an option that's placed there.
Thank you.
So I have a question as well, Fatima. Thank you so much for your explanation. Does it need to be on the ballot for the primary to then go into the November election?
No, you can choose primary or general, so August or November.
Councilwoman, I believe you had some more?
So we could just basically have the candidates in the primary election and then have the referendum and the home rule.
In
if
November,
We were
if you
carrying
choose.
that in November. And this cost would cover both, is what you're saying.
There may be a cost for that November election on top of this primary, but I don't know how much that cost would be.
But then too, we don't know if there will be a runoff.
Correct.
So my thought is that I think that we should carry the referendum into November and to carry the home rule into November, not knowing at this point in time if we're going to have a runoff, but we need to anticipate that if there's anything like what we had this time around, that it might possibly be that way.
That is an option.
I will. Are you concluded? Mr. Reynolds, you said it very clear. There's the pros and the cons to all these options, right? And I've been sitting around and I've been thinking all week in regards to what's good, what are the pros, what are the cons, and I've made my list. You got those that are maybe some of you are like me and have that election hangover, and you're just like, I'm just so glad my phone isn't getting text messages 10 times a day, We're not seeing commercials. We're not seeing signs up on the street. But then on the other hand, you have those individuals who went out and worked hard and got signatures. And those people, maybe fresh on their mind on what they have going on, they might want to just rip off the Band-Aid and just say, hey, we're done. Let's vote. Let's put this behind us and see what that looks like. I don't even know what to say to that. But I like it. And then you have those that say, hey, maybe a longer period of time gives both sides the opportunity to get their message out to the residents instead of trying to convince someone at a door with a 10-second conversation or an interaction outside the library. They get to kind of weigh the pros and cons, and the residents actually get to be an educated voter. And then you have those, if we push it out to a primary or to a general, do we have more voter participation? Historically, we're going to have more people come out and physically vote during that time as opposed to just an envelope vote. So do we get to hear from more residents if we go further? And Mr. Legler, I don't know in regards to anyone being harmed in reference to the applicant themselves. Is that an issue that needs to be addressed? Has the applicant expressed interest in wanting to have this sooner? Because they've been waiting. What is the feel on that? Is the town, would we be subject to any liability if it was pushed out? What is the story
I don't
there?
believe there would be any liability. The statute makes it clear that you have this discretion, and I can't think of a basis on which the liability would occur.
Thank you. And then ultimately, we talk about this, and I think a lot of us can get under this and think money. It really comes down to dollars. We can all agree. Heck, we had some speakers this evening talk about what they believe to be frivolous spending. So if no one's going to be harmed, it still goes. No one's going to be moving dirt anytime soon. No one is actually having an issue with this, and we can save $100,000. Is that the real tiebreaker in this situation? Some would argue, yes, the tiebreaker is $100,000, and the same outcome will go forward. Will the voters still get their voice? Yeah. Would we get it right away? So is being impatient worth $100,000? I think it might be, but that's just my thought on this. And I've kicked it back and forth, and we hear it all the time. And we see it on social media about how there's frivolous spending. And granted, we're not the government where we're studying, monkeys in Ecuador with United States taxpayer money. This is something that is local here that really affects everyday residents. I think it's something we definitely need to weigh in on. So just my thought. Councilman?
I have a quick question. The $89,000 for a special election, has that amount of money been budgeted currently in this town, in the current town budget?
Correct. It is the practice that I budget at least from 300 to 400,000 just in case there's a special election. So my budget always has that whenever we have election cycles.
So you carry that over every year, and we haven't spent it since Walmart?
Correct.
Okay.
Does it incur interest? 7 years?
I'm sorry?
Since 2007 and 7 years, does it incur interest?
No, 'cause it's
I'm
part of
joking.
the
I'm
budget.
joking.
I think that was a facetious question.
Like, I don't-
We're actually making money by not using it. Councilman?
I agree with you, Mr. Mayor, that, there's a lot to weigh on this one. I've had a lot of conversations with quite a few people in the community. And I hear the arguments for and against, and I respect the arguments that I've heard. One of the things that sticks out to me is that over 4,000 voters have exercised their right to seek a referendum. I definitely feel that they deserve to have their voices heard and their votes cast at the earliest opportunity. And I believe that all parties involved, whether you're for or against, have the right to, get this over with as, soon as possible. That's kind of where I'm leaning. I agree, though, I have heartburn spending, money that can go somewhere else. And it is a big conundrum with me right now.
Couldn't have said it better, sir. And I think about the times where there's obviously individuals that think it'll pass, and then there's those that signed a referendum who believe it would fail. At the end of the day, we wait X number of months, or heck, it would be almost 2 years, I guess, from now. And their outcome, what they want, for it to not happen would happen. And what benefit would the town have? We got to keep 100 grand. That's the only, like I said, the only thing that's keeping me on this is just that $100,000. That's all, or almost $100,000. What could we get with $100,000? Probably almost 1,000, maybe probably a little under 1,000 feet of sidewalk. We hear about that all the time. So what does that money look like? Where does it go? But I 100% concur with you, sir. Councilman.
Thank you, Mayor. First, I'd like to commend you for a pretty good analysis of the issue here. I think you covered the major points. And this is a very divisive issue, of course. I pretty much totally agree with what Mr. Zurcher said, though. Almost everyone that I've talked to about this has indicated that they feel that it should be on the May ballot. The only thing that sticks in my craw is the cost, and it's unfortunate, but I think that it's the cost of doing business. It's been budgeted, and I think that there's enough people that think it should be that way that we should go forward with it, even though I'm fiscally conservative on these things. So that's my only issue is the cost. But I believe that we should go along with all the people I've talked to of May.
Councilwoman.
So I hear both of that arguments as well, but I've also heard the other side. And we were asked to have this be delayed anyway so that the new 4 people that were elected in this last election could have more of a voice. So coming up with it in May and the cost being $100,000, that's a lot of money to me. I'm sure everybody thinks that you can do a lot of things with $100,000. If you're asking for it to be delayed between the May and the August 4th for the primary, or possibly even the November 2026, that also gives new council members, if they are to be changed out or reelected, or however that's going to happen, because we can't read the future, that at least gives that timing also, so that we don't again hear the argument that we need to have new council members be making this decision. So to me, I'm leaning more towards the November 26th vote, so that it would change. It would change so that we don't have to spend the extra $100,000. It's going to be already on the ballot. It would be something people could become educated about more by being able to have more time to hear both sides and to make their own decision. So that's just my opinion as well. Thank you.
Well, one thing's clear. I think if we were having a primary in August of 2025, I think we would all agree that bumping it just a couple months wouldn't be a big deal at all and save us $100,000. But of course, that's not how life works. So we're stuck with this tough decision. So, Vice Mayor.
So just clarifying. So in August, we have to have the primary for council elected. And we can have this question on that in August. Can we also have the home rule question in August?
Yes, that could be an option.
So then that way, everything could be done in August, just in case people won in the primary and we don't even have a general.
Correct.
And then we would save that November money like we did this year.
Correct.
Got it.
Councilman, did you have something else? Okay. Councilman? Everything being said, Council or staff, is there anything to add?
Not sure if it helps, but these are the rates as of today. We all approve budgets. The county, I shared with you the fee schedule for the county. For when they approve budgets, I don't know if the rates are going to go up. I do know that this last election, we paid like $3 and something, and now 2 years prior used to be $2, so I don't know. And it kind of does make a difference with also the amount of registered voters, because these numbers are from the election in August. I don't know how many registered voters have signed up since then for this November election, and how many will sign up for May or for August in 2026.
So the cost of postage going up, that would obviously ultimately affect.
That could also be a factor too.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
And I don't know if you heard the announcement on the news this evening about the Postal Service, but they were very concerned that we're even going to have a Postal Service this coming year.
I'll make a motion if you want a motion.
We have a motion? Oh, Councilwoman, did you hit the button?
Well, it didn't come up yet.
Go.
If we're making a motion to, I would like to make the motion as well, but I would like to make it be very well heard so that as we are voting, you are knowing whether it's an agreement with how I'm making the motion or not. So if it's permission from you, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to go ahead and make a motion to authorize the mayor to sign resolution number 2024-2394, referring the ordinance number 2024-938 to the voters at the next ensuing general election in 2026. And I'd like to direct the clerk to notify the county election officials of the decision not to participate in the May 2025 election date by electronic vote.
I second it.
Clerk, is that a valid motion?
That is a valid motion. There was a second, Mayor.
Thank you. With that, please call the vote.
Councilmember Dickinson,
On my computer, yes.
Vice Mayor Hunt,
Well, I'd rather have it in August, but I guess my vote will be yes.
Mayor, that passes 4-2.
Thank you, ma'am. Moving on, item 10C, 2025 Legislative Guiding Principles, Consideration and Possible Action. Mr. Barton, welcome, sir.
Mayor and Council, as you all know, we utilize the services of Tri-Advocates, who is our designated lobbyist.
Can you make sure that,
Can you hear me now? Okay.
I think it's a microphone issue. It's on.
Okay, can you hear me?
Get closer.
Okay, I'll just talk louder. So as you all know, we utilize the services of Tri-Advocates. It's our designated lobbyist to represent us at the legislature. In turn for that, we've developed legislative priorities for the town. They reflect our strategic and council priorities. With these, they have certain protections and priorities for what we have in the jurisdiction, like maintaining local autonomy here, ensuring that we have authority over what happens in our jurisdictional boundaries, ensuring that we have that we can maintain our revenue sources so that they're not peeled off. A big focus here is water and water conservation, water protection. There's a number of strategic initiatives in here that we focus on that relate to our strategic plan. Attainable housing's one, public safety, infrastructure, maintenance of infrastructure, jobs, creation of jobs. And so there's a number of priorities in here that reflect a number of things the council has illustrated our priorities for the town. These are broad, making it so that we're flexible. As you know, the legislative session requires you to be nimble. It's fluid as you go throughout it, so they're broad enough, but they are direct in illustrating what our priorities are as a town. And so we'll continue to work with Tri-Advocates throughout the legislative session on this. But with that, I'll take any questions or comments.
We have questions for Mr. Barton.
Thank you, Skylar. The only thing I would add is that we put on there homelessness, both funding and services. So I'm thinking maybe more vouchers. That's something that we need at the state level and the federal level, so that because our pig count our point in time count isn't always large enough to get more vouchers up here for our residents. So if we can have our lobbyists work on anything to have to do with supportive services for homelessness, I would like to add that to the list.
Vice Mayor, that can be a condition of approval, and then we'll add that verbiage.
Council, any other questions for Mr. Barton?
No, I have a comment, though. I can't speak highly enough about Tri-Advocates and how wonderful they have been over the last few years in assisting us in understanding the bills that have come before the legislature and keeping us well informed. And I think that, that we would not be where we are today without their assistance.
Anything else? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to approve the 2025 legislative guiding principles for the town of Prescott Valley by electronic vote.
I'll second.
Clerk, please call the vote.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
not coming up. You can roll call vote if you
Okay.
need to.
Mayor Palguda,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hunt,
Yes.
Councilmember Dickinson,
Yes.
Councilmember Schumacher, Councilmember Searcher,
Yes.
Councilmember Freund. Okay, that passes unanimously.
Thank you, ma'am. Next up, 10D, FDP 22-002, Jasper Phase 3. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council. This is a final development plan for Jasper Phase 3. The Jasper Community Master Plan was approved with a total unit count of 3,587 on around 1,245 acres. This phase was initially submitted in 2021, but was placed on hold by the applicant due to market conditions at the time, and instead they pursued approval of Phase 5. Jasper community is located just west of Glasford Hill and west of the Granville community. Phase 3 is on the southwest corner of Jasper Parkway and Iron King Trail. This phase will consist of 272 residential units on approximately 130 acres. A trailhead will also be constructed on the southwest corner of Jasper Parkway and Santa Fe Loop. It is anticipated that the required updates to the TIA will identify off-site mitigations and may identify additional timelines and milestones. Staff did receive the certificate of assured water supply that we have, and staff wanted to thank the applicants. They've been great to work with and very responsive to all of our requests. Staff recommends approval of FDP 22-002 for Jasper Phase 3 with the conditions listed in Resolution 2024-2393. I'm available for questions, as are the applicants as well.
Thank you, sir. And I don't know if you're able to answer this or not. When was Jasper originally brought before council for approval?
So I believe the master plan was in 2014.
20 when?
14.
Okay. Thank you. We had a speaker earlier advised that council approved it in 2019 for all of Jasper, so I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you, sir. Mr. Wells, is there anything you'd like to add, or Mr. Giese? Council, we have additional questions for Mr. Norlock.
I do.
Vice Mayor?
So this project is in compliance with the zoning and general plan?
Correct, it is.
Okay. And these units, 272 units, are in compliance with the 2035 general plan, which states 75,000 population build out.
That's correct.
Okay, and then my only other question, I don't see it on here, but I thought that they generously agreed to the school district condition. Yes, he's shaking his head, yes, but I don't see that in here, Ivan.
It's not a condition. It's not a formal condition.
So it's in the change of zone?
This isn't dealing with a change of zone. This is just the final development plan. The change of zone, I don't believe included that either. I believe they're doing that voluntarily.
Okay, so let the record show that the generous Mr. Giese is shaking his head yes, that he does want to contribute per building permit to our school district and our children. Thank you, sir.
Councilwoman?
Will the Jasper Parkway be finished at that time when they're starting to break ground for this new development park?
If I could call on Mr. Latier, I believe he has the best information on that, our town engineer.
Mr. Letier, did you hear the question? Councilwoman's asking if
Would you
Jasper
ask
Parkway,
again?
Jasper Parkway will be completed.
Would you ask it again?
I'm sorry, is the Jasper Parkway, will it be completed in time for the groundbreaking of the new development?
I believe it will. Thank you, Mayor and Council. The Jasper Parkway right now is currently under construction. A portion of the alignment will be open prior to, actually, part of the development is under construction. So it's a difficult question to answer because ground has already been broken, so to speak. But yes, Jasper Parkway should be open and operating.
And it won't be any problem with having the larger machinery also utilizing that area? I know with the Prescott East Highway, a lot of the citizens there were not really happy about how the larger machinery was going down that roadway, and instead that'll be taken off, and being able to go to the Jasper Parkway would be a big benefit, in my opinion. So,
Yes, and that's correct. And one of the conditions that we had in there is the update to the TIA, and the new traffic report should identify the changes in the operation based on what's been built so far with Jasper and kind of where the development is at this point.
thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Anything else?
A question.
Councilwoman?
Reference Stone Ridge Drive that extends from Highway 69 and is supposedly to merge with Jasper Parkway.
Yes.
Will that be initiated, or will it be started, or will it be, I guess that's the same.
Mr. Geesey, can you come up and address that, please?
Thank you.
Good evening, Jason Geesey. It may be just easier for me to answer these questions. So inquiring minds all want to know when the road's going to be open and operational. Final lift of asphalt looks like it's going to start next week. And so we're within about 30 days from being able to kick it open. I'll speak to the TIA as well because I know that our traffic engineer has already met with staff. In talks with Gilbert, he explained the need. I understand it. And so we have authorized, approved that contract already. And so we will get a traffic impact analysis, work with the town as we try to figure out the future as it relates to the road. The road does connect at Stone Ridge Drive. So to the south is Stone Ridge Drive at the traffic light, and then to the north would be Jasper Parkway South. It's a little bit confusing. Road's heading north, but it's just coming out of Jasper, which is to the north. So it's Jasper Parkway South. So that might make it easier for staff, and happy to answer any other questions.
Councilwoman?
Yes, ma'am.
I do have one more question. I apologize. Earlier this evening, I believe it was addressed as a highway, but it is just a roadway, correct? A two-way roadway?
I think they call it a parkway, and I think what they're referring to is there's no interruption. So my recall is coming out of the roundabout on Jasper that exists today. It's about 1.65 miles to the, I'll call it the pavement south of, or to the north of Culver's there, because the traffic intersection is already in. It's not being built. And so the challenge, the issue is going to be there's cut through traffic. There's no doubt about it. We work there and we deal with it every day, meaning I see it. Does someone from Mingus West go to Costco via Jasper Parkway South in the future? I'm going to tell you that, yes, people will seek the easiest route, right? The fastest route. And so then we get into, it's not designed as a parkway. It's a city street, a town street. And the reason for the TIA is that it's likely that in the future that road needs to be expanded, but we don't know what the use will actually be. That's why we're going to the trouble and the expense of the restudying the traffic.
I just heard it referred to tonight as a highway, and
It's not a highway, no.
a highway. It's not going to be high speed. It's not going to be an arterial roadway. Okay, thank you very much.
Sure. Anything else before I sit down?
Council, if we don't have anything else, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to authorize the mayor to sign resolution number 2024-2393, adopting FDP 22-002 Jasper Phase 3 by electronic vote.
I have a second?
Second that, Mr. Mayor.
Sir, clerk, please call the vote.
Mayor, that passed 5-1.
Thank you. Next up, ZOA 24-001, Town Code Chapter 13, zoning update, consideration of possible action. This is a public hearing, which I am opening up right now. Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
Ms. Kennedy, are you leading us off?
Yes, I am. Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members. Donna Kennedy, Development Services Director. Alongside of me, I have Frank Cassidy, our consultant, our land use attorney, to present this item tonight. As you all know, that this has been in front of the town various times. I know when I started here a year and a half ago, I was assigned to it, and the project had already been in the works. So it's very satisfying to be here tonight to get your approval upon updating our code. You know, our code was initially adopted in 1978. Most towns and jurisdictions have major updates by now. We've been having minor ones, but today's update is a major update. And it included working with various departments. I especially like to acknowledge that our neighborhood services and our code department has looked into this, our legal staff, public works, town engineer, and of course our planners from development services. A lot of thoughts and efforts have gone into this. I'd like to ask that as we go through this, Mr. Cassidy is going to give you all the current updates. As you know, we had 2 public hearings with the joint sessions, with study sessions with the planning and zoning. We've reached out to clients, business leaders. We've put this on our website. We've solicited daily comments. Many of the comments are going to be addressed tonight, but we do have some that we'll be carrying forward at the beginning of next year. We are in the process of providing and hopefully getting approval from you, development design guidelines for residential and commercial. So it'd be more appropriate to put some of the comments received into there. Tonight, any action that you'll take, I just want to mention that if there's something you want to add or change, please make it by a motion. I need to have it documented. So let's just say if it's a definition or something, make the motion so that all can vote and I'll take that forward. We hope to get this all solidified tonight, so we'll have our second hearing in December 12th, I believe it is. So what we have as a base that we look forward to is that we're trying to enhance our neighborhoods for safety and to have livable neighborhoods. Our Vision 2024 focus, of which the council is a big part of, had identified different strategies to lead us to that way. But as we look at it, and in the code, when we look to implement this, we see safety. But infrastructure also involves safety. Housing involves safety. Connectivity involves safety. Recreational space involves safety, as well as community engagement. My point here is that we don't look at this in a silo at every element of the code. We look how it affects the whole development code.
Mr. Mayor, if I could just real quick, I wanted to make sure the date is December 11th. That was moved because of some conflicts with council schedules. So December 11th, and then it's not a second hearing, it's just the final, the
Adoption.
council will do the final approval of it.
Thank you. Then the general plan is another guiding principle for us, because our general plan calls up for us when there's a need to update your code, the town needs to take action to do so. We've looked at standards such as signage, parking, building design. Again, some elements will be in the code and some will be in design guidelines, but this all affects to improve our livability. That's the ultimate goal for our residents. We want to make it the safer community, which we decided that even looking at our graphics, and I have to say we presented when we had hired a consultant to help us with our graphics to demonstrate what our goal is for each. So it's easier not only for our planners, for the departments, but for our residents to understand what we're relaying the information to them as we go through the process. So our Chapter 13 zoning code also, this is only half of the elements that we look at. I'm going to have Frank get into the details about this, but he will also add to the conversation. November 4th, we had our Planning and Zoning Commission recommend approval. There's a few comments they have, and Frank will decide and demonstrate where they fit into the code and for your approval to include it in your decision making. So at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Frank.
Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Donna. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Appreciate the opportunity to be here. Let me turn that into a slide presentation. There we go. The materials for today included not just the draft that we're talking about today, but also there was a comparison, red line comparison to the version that you looked at during your joint session on September the 5th. And just in case you had watched or had been familiar with the version that went to the commission on the 4th of November, there was also a red line showing some changes from the version that the Planning Commission saw, so that you could see the changes that they recommended as well. There's a derivation table, so if you know the existing code really well and you said, I know that provision was in the code, where is it in the new code? That tells you where it is. There's also a major changes table that sort of explains some of the key changes, and also there's a housing impact statement, which is required by state law. So those are all the materials. That's why it's so darn long. I apologize. It's a good reading material if you have trouble falling asleep, but you know, other than that, it's just a lot. Thank goodness we don't print out the entire agenda. It's all electronic now. So the overview of what I'm going to present today is that, first of all, we're going to talk about what were the goals, what were some of the key changes from the existing Chapter 13 to the current draft, and including the changes since you last saw this on September 5th. Some additional tweaks that happened as a result of the commission hearing, some new tweaks that were not discussed at P&Z but are still under discussion for your consideration, and then open it up for your discussion. So that's basically the way it's going to go. Our whole point in doing this is to simplify the language, make it easier to understand, make it easier to find things, avoid duplication, simplified some of the procedures, clarify some of the zoning districts, things like that. And also to try to pursue some attainable housing goals that the Attainable Housing Task Force had. And I didn't coin that term, by the way. Somebody did complain to me about using attainable housing. That was just the name of the task force, was Attainable Housing Task Force. And so we did try to incorporate some of that task force's work. You've seen this before. It's just an explanation of how the zoning district names changed a little bit. We stuck all of the provisions pertaining to particular uses together. In the existing code, for example, if you're looking for what are the rules about marijuana uses, you'll have to look in many locations in the current code. In the new code, they were all amalgamated into a single section. Same is true for several other types of uses. So it's just easier to find. The new code uses tables instead of text. So you'll have, in the existing code, you'd have 30 or 40 pages of lists of uses. That gets boiled down to just a couple of pages of tables. And the uses themselves are amalgamated into combined uses. So you'll have animal A uses, animal B, animal C. That's a progression of animal uses from the least obnoxious, if you will, to the most obnoxious. The higher letter it goes, and same with all the others. And so that simplifies how you look at the code. It also makes it easier if there's a new use that comes along. It makes it easier for the zoning administrator to try to figure out where does that fit in the continuum. So it's just an easier kind of way to look at it. One of the key changes has to do with multifamily housing. The existing code in the C1, C2, and C3 districts, which are now called CN, neighborhood commercial, CG, general commercial, and CI, which is industrial commercial. The current code allows multifamily in 25% of a one-story commercial building in those zones, or on upper floors of multi-story buildings. We've kept that, but we've also added that it also is allowed as a primary use, so you don't have to have some other commercial use on the first floor. It could be allowed, multifamily, as a primary use if allowed by a special use permit or through a rezoning process in these same zones. So it expands it just a little bit. The update also, pursuant to feedback given on September the 5th, we removed the 50 square foot per unit storage requirement. That's no longer in the code for multifamily. Another key change has to do with factory-built buildings. Now, a factory-built building is a building that's basically built to building code standards. So it meets International Building Code, but it's built in a factory and then hauled to the site. So in every respect, it has the same construction quality as an on-site built home, but it's built in a factory, then brought to the property. The existing code is a little bit ambiguous about whether these are permitted in all stick-built, if you will, locations. The revised code makes it very clear that, yes, they are allowed in all stick-built locations. So they're treated just like a stick-built home. I will point out that many communities have covenants, conditions, and restrictions that prohibit them. Our code doesn't overrule those covenant CC&Rs, and so those will still come into play, and in those locations, obviously, because of those private contracts, they still won't be able to do factory-built dwellings, but in any event, under our code, they will be permitted. One of the other things is, since you have to bring it to the site, there are some siting requirements, and we have a separate chapter of the town code, chapter 15, that deals with siting requirements, and it includes factory built dwellings, and that will still apply. And of course, those don't apply to a stick-built home. All right. Another change that was made based on the discussion at the September 5th meeting was, if you recall, I had proposed to open up the MH zone, what's called I guess in the current code it's R1 MH, and now in the new code it's just MH zone, where mobile homes are permitted. Manufactured homes are permitted. That I had proposed, pursuant, with some staff feedback, to open that up to allow the home of my own homes to be allowed in that zone. And the feedback that came back was, well, why not just allow stick-built housing there? So that actually simplified things a little bit. So that actually is now carried into this version. The MH zone does allow site-built, stick-built homes in that zone. Another key change is manufactured homes. Right now in the existing code, manufactured homes, so these are homes built to HUD, national HUD standards. Those homes are only allowed in the R1M and R1MH zones. They'll still be allowed, obviously, in the comparable zones in the new code, which are the RM and the MH zones in the revised code. And also in the existing code, manufactured home parks are allowed by what they called use permit under the old code. We call them conditional use permits now in the C1, C2, and C3. Well, in the update, we have all of those same things, but we've added that a manufactured home that has all the features of appearance of a site-built home. So it has to have a garage, it has to have eaves, etc., and those provisions are in the code, can also be allowed in site-built housing districts with a special use permit. Now, this is the kind of use permit that comes to the council ultimately. It gets a recommendation by the commission and then comes to the council. So it's like a mini rezoning, basically. But if they go through that entire process, or if they go through a full rezoning and ask for manufactured housing in one of the traditional zones, this would allow that kind of site-built looking manufactured housing in those zones. The new code also allows manufactured home parks to be permitted by SUP or as part of a rezoning in the RM or MH zones. Right now, RM and MH allow manufactured housing, but they don't allow manufactured housing, manufactured home parks. So now it would be opened up also to manufactured home parks, as long as they go through that special mini rezoning or full rezoning process. The next key change is the terminology from use permit to conditional use permit and special use permit. Under your current code, under the existing code, you have something called a use permit, but that terminology actually under your current code has two different procedures. The normal use permit procedure is to go to the Board of Adjustment for issuance of a use permit. And then if there's an appeal, the appeal goes to the council. But for things like telecom, uses that are a little bit more impactful, if you will, those, even under the current code, have to go to the council. They must be approved by the council. Under the revised code, I've taken the Board of Adjustment out of the picture. I don't have anything against the Board of Adjustment. I don't want you to think I have anything against the Board of Adjustment, but under the state law, Board of Adjustment has some particular duties. They give variances and they interpret the zoning code. So they're really not the right, in my opinion, entity to be reviewing what amounts to a mini zoning application. It's really the Planning Commission or the staff who does that sort of thing. So that's the way we've done it, is CUPs, which are the lesser strenuous process, that actually will now go to a staff process. The zoning administrator, after sending out the notices to people within 300 feet, would make and getting feedback from those people, staff would make that determination on a CUP, and as long as there's no appeal, that's the end of it. The CUP is administratively issued. If there's an appeal, that appeal goes straight to the council. So the council would then decide it. And the council itself, if you hear about a CUP situation, you're one of the people who can appeal it. So if you want to hear a case that's going to a CUP, you always have the option to have it come to the full council for consideration. So that's the CUP process. The SUP, special use permit process, and this is used for some of the uses that are of greater concern, if you will, from a land use perspective. This process requires a recommendation from the Planning Commission and then action by the council. So it's like a mini rezoning. You don't have quite the same number of procedures involved, but nevertheless, it does go to both of those bodies. And that's used for things like, again, telecommunications, as in the current code. We've added utility scale solar. So if somebody wanted to come to town with basically a solar farm, they'd have to go through an SUP process or get it approved through a full rezoning process. That's also an option. But in any event, or wind turbines, which are not in the current code. And as I mentioned previously, now the manufactured housing provisions would also use that heightened SUP process. The revised code also now adds a provision that's not in your existing code called conditional uses upon annexation or diminution claim. It's kind of a complicated thing, but it's basically opening up for the council's action the ability to give somebody upon annexation a use that was permitted in the county, but upon annexation normally wouldn't be allowed in the town. Normally what ends up happening is a person will say, I'd love to come into the town, but the use I want to use my property for, which I can in the county, it's not allowed in the town. This now allows you, when you annex the property, to allow that use as a special, in a special condition of that sort. So, all right, another change is your current code, and we talked about this on September 5th, but basically has a minimum lot size on the standard zones of 10,000 square feet. Now, this would allow zoning density designations of -5, 6, 7, and 8 to actually have lot sizes of 6, 7, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And then the minimum widths and lengths of the lots are slightly reduced as well to accommodate these different lot sizes. The densities, the overall densities are the same. The existing code already says, has a density designation of 5, for example. It's just that if you want to do R1L5 if you have R1L5 and you have a 10,000 square foot lot, that means you have to have a 10,000 square foot lot, put 2 homes on it. Under this approach, you'd be able to actually split that into 2 5,000 square foot lots. That's the difference. But I mean, so the density stays the same. It's just that a person can now have a smaller lot size. A question had come up, well, if we do this, does it apply to some existing land? There is a little bit of land that has existing zoning that will be now able to be used in smaller lots, not very much. Again, the density ends up being the same. For example, in the R1L5, if you had R1L5, there's 109 acres of that right now in the town. And right now you can do 5,000 square foot density on 10,000 square foot lots. Now you'll just be able to do 5,000 square foot lots. So it's kind of a more simplified approach. All right, another key change has to do with planned area development. Planned area developments, PADs, can now be, right now in your existing code, they're an overlay. Under the revised code, they can be either an overlay or a primary zoning designation. Under the existing code, it requires 40 acres. Now you can do it down to 5, as small as 5 acres. These now follow the standard rezoning process. The only difference is that for a PAD, you have a bunch more front-loaded information that's required. So if you compare the PAD documentation requirements to the standard rezoning documentation requirement, there's a lot more stuff that comes with a PAD. But other than that, it comes through the same basic process. It's essentially, as it is right now, it's a developer-written and council-approved zoning regulation for a particular piece of property. And then the way this goes is that subdivision plats, development plans, and things that are consistent with the PAD later on are staff approved. It's just an administrative approval. Already approved PADs, so PADs that have been approved in 2024 and prior that have their own procedures explained in them or were approved with particular procedures must follow the procedures that came with their approval. So most of these procedural things having to do with PADs will apply prospectively only. So anything, for example, if an existing PAD said, council, you're going to see X, Y, and Z, and it says that in the PAD that you approved last year, you'll still see that. So it didn't change that. All right. So another key change is that I've added a zoning procedures section. One of the key things I've heard in reaction, especially to the draft that was presented to you on September the 5th was, hey, people show us pretty pictures in the zoning hearing process, and then when they get the zoning, and then what they build is not the same. Okay. Well, the problem is that there's nothing in your current code that requires that documentation, which an applicant brings to you, that be part of the rezoning that gets approved. It does happen that way for PADs, and you have in the PAD process something that you call a preliminary development plan. Well, now preliminary development plan is the name of the document that identifies the zoning entitlements that somebody gets for any kind of zoning. So if you want a rezoning to R1 to RL, residential zoning, and you're showing pretty pictures of how this development is going to be, those pretty pictures are the preliminary development plan that gets approved with your rezoning. And if you want to change it after your zoning is approved and it's substantially different from what you presented at council, you have to come back and get that approved so that there's no surprises in the process. So it's designed to deter speculative rezonings. The only time that preliminary development plan doesn't tie up the property is if the council itself says, you know what, I'm not gonna, if the council asserts that it doesn't want to tie the property to that specific development, that it does want to just give the generic zoning, it can certainly do that. But the general rule is going to be that if nothing else is said, those promises, those pretty pictures become part of the record and are approved with it. You might notice, by the way, if you look at the procedures in the rezoning procedures section, they look a lot like the PAD procedures, and they are. I basically moved the PAD procedures and applied a lot of that process to all rezonings. But anyway, that's the way that is. The preliminary development plan, by the way, then also gets recorded with the ordinance, the rezoning ordinance, so that even a later buyer knows that those are the rules applicable to that property. And again, with subdivision and plats and final development plans, as long as they're consistent with what was approved as part of the preliminary development plan, those get approved administratively, not through a council process. Another key change is, and this was actually added after September 5th, the legislature this year adopted a shot clock for rezonings. It applies to all rezonings except for PADs or rezonings in historic districts by state law. And it basically what it says is you have to finish a rezoning within 180 days. So I stuck that in this because this is our last chance to add it to the code before the deadline, which is the end of this year. So I've added that. Another little change is I was going to put land splits, which are in the existing chapter 13. I was going to put them into chapter 14 because I thought those two were going to be coming forward at the same time, but we're a little behind on chapter 14, and I didn't want there to be a period of time where you didn't have regulations on land splits, so I stuck land splits back in. So if you're wondering why land splits are all of a sudden in when they weren't in on September the 5th, that's why they're there. Okay, additional tweaks approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission was that we realized that if you go through a rezoning and you're showing your preliminary development plan, let's say you're showing that throughout the rezoning, you've always said, hey, I want to have manufactured housing on this property. If manufactured housing was a SUP or CUP use, for example, in that zone, we wanted to make sure that you didn't have to, as soon as you finish the rezoning, go back and get an SUP or CUP. In other words, you've already gone through the process. So uses authorized by CUP and SUP can also be approved just by the rezoning. So as long as it's clearly part of the rezoning process, you don't have to repeat the process. That's all that thing was that was added. We changed in the version that went to the P&Z, there were certain uses that were only allowed by rezoning. Out of a concern for uniformity of uses permitted in zones, we've changed those to also allow them to be permitted through the SUP process, which is the mini rezoning process. Another thing that was added and discussed in front of the P&Z was that standard engineering practice always takes precedence over whatever you approve as a preliminary development plan. In other words, you're not engineers. You see what I'm saying? So somebody might show you a pretty picture and you say, hey, that looks great, that's super. But then when somebody presents it to John Latier for approval, he says, that's interesting, but trucks can't turn that tight. So engineering requirements are going to overrule anything in the zoning entitlement documents. So that's in there. I made a mistake in the SUP process that was in your September 5th thing. I failed to repeat the procedural elements of the SUP process, so I now stuck those in. The clinic definition now expressly includes all aspects of ambulatory care. And by the way, we got a letter today from the hospital, and they're actually suggesting a simplified version of the definition of clinic. And that's even simpler than the way I did it. And I certainly have no objection to using theirs. But basically now it includes all of those elements that you would see for ambulatory care. And now it also, pursuant to action by the commission, a model home, during the time it's being used as a model home, can be used as a real estate office. It used to say it can only be used as a real estate office for selling homes in this subdivision. But how would you know? I'm not sure how you'd even enforce that if you wanted to. But in any event, that has now been clarified and kind of opened up a little bit. All right, now not discussed, but at P&Z, but now added to this draft are the following items. So one of the things is that the engineering folks looked at our list of elements to be considered in a rezoning process. It used to be, again, in the PAD procedures process, but now it's in the general rezoning process. And there's a list of things that say, these are things you ought to be thinking about when you're granting a rezoning. They felt that we ought to be looking at off-site mitigation as one of the items. So I've added that as one of the items. I realized after the commission made the change on model homes that there was another section I needed to change. It says model homes may be open to public inspection only between the hours of 8 a.m. and 9 p.m. I realized that somebody with a real estate office might say, oh, that means I can keep my real estate office open at any time. I just can't show the model homes between 8 a.m. and 9 p.m. I thought, no, I don't want somebody making that argument. We'll just say model homes may be open only between those hours. So it's a minor change, and you can see the red line strikeout that I'm suggesting, that I made in this draft. There's also a provision. When I added the thing I forgot to add to the SUPs, I realized I was repeating things twice, and I hate repeating things twice. So I created a separate section where I could combine things that apply to both of those procedures. So minor thing. Anyway. And also there's a slight change to the conditional uses upon annexation and diminution provision, just to change the nomenclature, because it's not really a conditional use permit. Those are conditional uses that are allowed in those situations, but they don't get a conditional use permit. So it's a minor little wording thing. All right. So there are a few new requests that have been presented. People are constantly talking to us. And we realized that we thought we ought to bring these to your attention for your consideration. One is that there was a staff request to add to the nuisances and hazards section a provision that prohibits, quote, activities resulting in the spillage of oil, gasoline, or other hydrocarbons onto a paved or unpaved surface, unquote. That terminology. So right now, hydrocarbons are going to be regulated by other environmental laws. They're really not discussed in the zoning code, but the feeling was that we probably ought to have something to say, hey, if you're changing your oil and it's spilling on the ground onto the dirt, that should be a zoning violation. So if you're okay with it, that would be something to consider adding. We already in this code have a provision that says that you must park, if you're going to park in the front yard, it has to be on a paved surface and it can't be on more than half of the width of the lot. That was added to the new code, but now this would add another level of protection on that to say, and by the way, you can't spill your oil. All right. Neighborhood services, or somebody was concerned about allowing site-built housing in the MH zoning district before the adoption of residential design standards. And so for example, as Donna said, early next year, they plan to bring forward to you residential design standards and commercial design standards. And as I mentioned earlier, we now allow site-built housing in MH zone, but the concern was, well, what happens if you open this up? Somebody could put a McMansion, if you will, combine some of those lots in the MH zone, put a McMansion there, and that's of some concern. If that is a concern to you, an option would be to just remove the site-built housing as a permitted use in the MH zone for now, and then you can always add it when the design standards come. I don't have really an opinion one way or the other on that, but I'm just reporting that to you. The third item, I'll just leave to Vice Mayor Hunt, but I did want to mention that that she had also made a suggestion that instead of going through the SUP process for manufactured housing, that it be a CUP process, and I'll leave that to her. And as I mentioned, we did receive a letter from the hospital today, and they added a new request, which is they're concerned that if you look at the use table for the commercial and industrial zones, a hospital is allowed with a conditional use permit in some of the zones, the CG, CI, and PM specifically. But they were concerned that, well, what about nursing homes? And I said, well, I mean, the whole point of the hospital definition is overnight care. So if you can have a hospital, you can have a nursing home. But they were concerned that if they came forward later and somebody said, oh yeah, you can have a hospital, but you can't have a nursing home. So they wanted us to add a line to the use table to make it clear that with a conditional use permit in those same 3 zones, you could also have a nursing home. I don't have an opinion about that either. If you want to do that, it's fine. I mean, it's in my opinion, it's already covered by the fact that you can have hospitals, but if they feel like it's clear, that's fine. I think the next, so let me just show you what the last piece of the hospital's request was, because it's easier to just read it. So here's their letter. There's they allow nursing homes with conditional uses in CG, CI, and PM. But then under the clinic definition, here's what they're asking for is this language, right? Oh, I made it too big now. Sorry. Trying to make it readable, and I screwed it up. Sorry. Is a place for the provision of ambulatory health services where patients are not housed overnight. That's a much shorter definition than I have in there. I always like shorter. If they like shorter, I'm okay with this change that they've asked for too. So I've already prattled on way longer than I should have. I apologize, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Cassidy. I believe we're going to give you a break for a moment. This is a public hearing. Is there anyone out in the audience that wishes to comment or speak in regards to any of the plethora of things that Mr. Cassidy covered this evening? Oh, hang on. We can, yeah, if you guys just want to start your way down here, we can go from there. I can't see who's saying that, but
Mr. Mayor, I do have 3 people signed up.
there are 3 people signed up. Okay, so that's okay. On this case, it doesn't necessarily mean if you need to sign up or not. So let's just start working down. I promise we'll get to everybody.
John Rocha.
There you go.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members. This seems barbaric because it's been a long meeting, but just bear with me, please. My name's John Rocha. I'm a PV resident and also the owner of Southwest Homes. We are a manufactured home retailer and contractor. We've been doing it now for 4 years here in the whole northern Arizona area. Obviously, we've been very busy and we've been grateful for that. So that just tells us that we're obviously onto the right track of providing attainable housing for folks. Couple things. I had a little bit of a outline here, but I just do want to address a couple things. One is just from my industry's perspective, this is just educational. The modular home industry in Arizona is terrible. It takes 8 to 10 months to get the state to permit a modular home. And after they look it over, it goes to the local municipality to go through their own building process or building permit review process. So that can take anywhere from like 12 to 14 months just to get one modular home approved. The other thing is that it's cost prohibitive. The modular industry nationwide, actually, 95% of manufactured home factories don't build modular housing. And if they do, they have to change the entire way that they assembly line and roll houses through their factories. So it actually increases 30 to 35% in cost to do modular. So we get that question a lot from our customers. They hear modular. It's a fancy word that I think municipalities have hidden behind for a long time to be like, well, if it's modular, it's just way nicer. We can build a HUD home and a modular home side by side and you wouldn't tell the difference. It's just we're not meant to do modular in scale here in Arizona. The other thing I wanted to bring up was that the R1MH lots that we currently have here in the town of Prescott Valley, we looked them up and we have about 10 to 15 vacant lots in Prescott Valley that are currently zoned R1MH that allow for manufactured housing. 2 of those are probably buildable. The other, call it 10 to 12 or 13 of them are in flood zones. So if you look at the map at Prescott Valley, they were all bought by the town to run drainage through. So there's very low opportunity to use what's existing. So even converting that to the new MH district really leaves us out in the dust like we're accustomed to, kind of the redheaded stepchild of housing. Really, we've been here for a long time. So I wanted to bring that to your attention as well. The manufactured home to site built stipulations, just real quick, they're permanent foundations, 2x6, upgraded insulation just to what site built is. There's studies at 70 to 80 years old of lifespan on these buildings. They're all financeable, FHA, VA, USDA. So that was actually something new that happened this past February of this year, where Fannie and Freddie said we're treating them the same because they look the same, they're built the same. So I guess our concern is that we have no problem making sense of this we don't want them to look bad in bad neighborhoods. We just want the site build design stipulations to go into the CUP because it seems pretty wild to think that it has to go through the same process as a wind farm, solar farm, for the council to be sitting as a second regulatory body or review body for a building permit. That seems pretty crazy. The CUP still allows...
You're going to have to start wrapping it up.
Okay, yeah, real quick. CUP just allows the control for anybody that's opposed to a home like this in an existing neighborhood to voice their concerns. Council has power to come back and also stop it. It just seems to be the most reasonable path forward.
Thank you, sir.
For your time.
Ms. Betchold?
Okay, Patricia Betzel. Just a few comments, starting with a technical one based on my healthcare experience. With your clinics, you don't really want to limit it by stating no overnight stays, because if you have a ambulatory surgery and your surgery occurs at 4 p.m., you have your recovery time and you have observation time. And oftentimes that will take a patient technically overnight. So instead of that, we typically say less than 24-hour stay, and that equals ambulatory. On the other issues, changing how we process the CUPs to staff only really takes away public comment. This is especially important, again, from my healthcare experience. When you introduce a hospital, for example, into a community, hospitals are wonderful, but they are incredibly disruptive to domestic life. You have ambulances, police cars, high-intensity noises, they run 24/7, et cetera, et cetera. That is something that the public needs to comment on, and I'm sure there are other uses that you're thinking about having the staff approve that the public really needs to know about. Your comments at the beginning concerning enhancements to neighborhood seems to be contradictory to the town's efforts to provide attainable or affordable, whatever we want to call it, housing. When we artificially designate certain things that a small group of people feel makes things nicer, you really are taking away the American dream from some people, because you're opposing your opinions about what we should have in a home, including paving driveways. When you own 2 acres, you don't necessarily have to pave anything. You can use DG or whatever. So restricting oil spills, I totally get that. Telling people that they can't have an unpaved driveway and use DG instead, for example, especially in this area, is really prohibited and expensive, incredibly expensive. And I don't think that's fair to people. This is America. When you buy a piece of land and it's not in an HOA, you have expectations of some freedoms unless it's a safety issue. Other things about speculative rezoning, a little bit harder to understand. Reducing lot sizes. We don't really see why this would be occurring in single-family residences. People are already close enough together to hear them brushing the teeth in the next building. We don't really see an advantage to this, except to our developers, because they can pack more units onto the same lot. And then finally, I didn't hear you discuss additional dwelling units at all, and that is probably the biggest issue that we have a concern about in this proposed zoning change. Thank you.
Clerk, is there someone we missed? Come on up, ma'am.
Augustine, well,
You can go, ma'am. Go ahead.
Sorry, Louise Weeks again. And thank you for, didn't really realize I should have signed up. And I wasn't going to, but I did have just a question on that. It looked like the minimum square footage of the lots in Prescott Valley was 10,000. Is that? What happened, my God? Oh.
Mr. Cassidy, you're fine for now. You can answer all the questions.
Anyway, I was just wondering about that because I know in previous homes I've owned in Prescott Valley, the lot size was not 100 by 100. And so I just had a question about that. That was all.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Polk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Madam Vice Mayor, council members. My name is Stephen Polk, representing Dignity Health, Yavapai Regional Medical Center. And we did submit a letter requesting 2 minor kind of verbal corrections to the zoning ordinance. I think Mr. Cassidy explained them quite well, but I'll go over them. But first, I want to say I think you absolutely have the right attorney for the job. Frank Cassidy is an excellent land use attorney. He is the author of this land use treaties book. I pay $500 for that, sits in my office. He'll update it. I'll pay another $500 next year for it. And then I'm the town attorney for a local municipality as well. And one of the things we kick around is it would be great to do a full overhaul of the zoning code. And you know who we really should get is Frank Cassidy. And I think that really comes across. And making the code more understandable is better for everyone. It's better for the planners who are in there every day. It's better for people wanting to come in, and it's better for the citizens just to help understand what's allowed and what's not. So on to the hospital here. So the first request is to allow nursing homes under the same exact category in your CG, CI, and PM. So those are the commercial general, commercial light industrial, and your performance manufacturing districts. Allow those with the conditional use permit. Same with how you allow hospitals there. And the reasoning as the hospital, we really looked at that, and it's the skilled nursing facilities. So that's, you need a higher level of care. We're holding people absolutely for more than 24 hours there. If we're not allowed to do that in the clinic zone, because that's less than 24 hours, well, do we have to come in and get zoned for a hospital-approved use just to do a SNF, a skilled nursing facility? So if you look at the zoning code, it's allowed in some of the residential districts, or at least one of them right now. And so I think it makes perfect sense for 2 reasons. One, we want that kind of medical use allowed in those zones. But two, we could come in and get that hospital, allowed use under hospital. So why not? Let's be explicit. The code talks about nursing homes, and so let's add that line there. And then number two, is the definition of clinic. And that, right now it reads a place for the provision of medical services where patients are not housed overnight. And we would recommend a change, just to change that medical services to ambulatory health services. That's just kind of the more modern technical term for that. And kind of the best analogy I have for that is, last night I'm playing hockey at the Wheelhouse here in Prescott Valley, and a guy on the other team hooks me. It's a 2-minute penalty, right? It's a penalty. That's the technical term. But you could also call it a foul, and people would know what you mean. And so that's kind of if you call it a place for medical services, we all know what it means. But when you talk to the medical providers, and I talked to a number of them, Dr. Torres, who's the CEO here, and other medical providers, and ambulatory health is what they're talking about when you're talking about this kind of use. And then I get, a special thank you to Miss Patricia there on the other thing we did kick around is on the overnight, and what do we mean by overnight? And certainly when I read that, I interpret that to mean we hold it for less than 24 hours a patient. And that kind of comes from the Medicare rules. So it would not also be a bad change to just say where we hold patients for less than 24 hours. Because that's certainly when we looked at that and asked that, we said, we interpret that to mean that exact thing. So I'm available for any questions. Thank you.
Mr. Polk. Clerk?
Do we have Augustine Bolger?
Augustine
Okay, never
Bolger?
mind. He's not.
She's not here. Anyone else? Anyone else that didn't sign up? Here's your opportunity. Seeing no one. Oh, we got someone. Come on down, sir. We can't talk about cars and driveways today, okay? All right, sir.
Talk about cars and driveway. Council, thanks for letting me say my piece here. We talked about hazardous material being dripped on driveways and asphalt and dirt roads and dirt. I've been around my neighborhood probably for the last 6 months, 7 months, and I've had vehicles with the cherry pickers engines hanging off of them, motorcycle parts. The whole front yard's full of automobile parts, trailers, stuff like that. And that's why I came before the council and before Donna and Gilbert and a few of other people, because I feel our neighborhood is now becoming a mechanics area, and it doesn't need to be. You got a garage, maybe you need to clear it out. Work inside your garage, pull the garage door down during the weekends. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Clerk, anyone else?
No one else, Mayor.
Thank you, ma'am. Public hearing is closed. Mr. Cassidy, you're welcome to come back. Council, we have any comments, questions for Mr. Cassidy, Vice Mayor?
Mr. Cassidy, I think I heard you say that the modular home meets stick-built standards. Is that correct?
Factory built
Oh, meets
is
the
what I
good.
called it. He called it, the speaker who spoke at the public hearing referred to it as a modular home, but in the code, we call it a factory built. But we're talking about the same
Right,
thing.
and-
Yes, those are built to.
And in this
building
code, it talks about the requirement for garage, the eaves, and it to look like a stick-built home, correct?
That's for a manufactured home with an SUP now, under this code, would be permitted in stick-built zones with an SUP, as long as it has the garage, permanent foundation and other items, eaves, other things.
All residential zones.
And I think so.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure, yes.
And then, so in all residential zones, it would be allowed with more onerous requirements than we put on stick-built home, because stick-built homes don't have to have garages.
Correct.
But these manufactured homes would have to have garages.
That's the way it's written, yes.
Right. And so I agree that instead of it being a SUP, which is the same requirement for a wind farm, that it should be a CUP, which is more closer to a building permit, Because otherwise, homes that are really nice in residential zones, these kind of homes individually for infill would have to come to council. Right? Just like a wind turbine does. Okay,
Yes.
yeah. So my recommendation is that we change that to CUP. And then I feel like there was a conflict where you said that this type of home is allowed infill in any residential zone with the more onerous conditions and let's say a CUP. But then there was another slide where it said that you would have, it could only go in RU, RL, and RS districts.
RU, RL, and RS those are the districts, yes.
Okay,
Those
but-
are single-family home districts, though.
And those are all the single-family home
Those are the
districts.
single-family
Okay.
home districts, yeah.
Factory-built and manufactured homes can
Yeah.
go in any single-family homes with the more onerous conditions and a CUP.
Right. The only other single-family residential district is the, what's called the mixed-use zone, which they already allows the manufactured homes. That's why I didn't mention that in that list, so.
Great. And then, so the requirements for the PAD, the change in the PADs is much more onerous than what we do now.
Well, I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor and Madam Vice Mayor. No, actually, it's pretty much the same. The only difference is that we apply many of those requirements to all rezonings. We add those onerous elements of upfront studies are only added to PADs, not to just a typical run-of-the-mill rezoning.
But I think I heard you say it's going to go everywhere now.
Yeah, the preliminary development plan goes to all rezonings, but some of the studies, traffic studies and other things, not all of those are required for every rezoning. There's a longer list. If you look at the PAD application requirements, there's a longer list of application documents required with a PAD.
Great. And so that means that we have more onerous standards up front so that the project is more transparent to residents. Yes, Donna's shaking her head. Yes, thank you for that. And then I will also want to make a motion that the ambulatory definition says a place for the provision of clinic is a place for the provision of ambulatory health services where patients are kept less than 24 hours.
Just before we continue, Vice Mayor, if we're going to be doing changes, we will officially make a motion, and we'll just hold off until we do motions.
Okay.
Hold that thought, please.
So then, and then my only other comment would be that skilled nursing is allowed by CUP in the commercial and industrial zones because we have skilled nursing all over this CG zone already here. Great, thank you.
Councilwoman Schumacher.
Just had one quick question. When you were talking about the PDP, the preliminary development plans, that they're going to have the pictures now attached to
The
them as a-
pictures, anything that they present to you through the rezoning process becomes part of the preliminary development plan and gets approved with the rezoning. So what they promise you is what they're stuck with. That's
And then
essentially
is
what
that made available to the public so that they can also view it?
It is part of, in fact, it's available to the public just going to the recorder's office because as part of the recorded with the rezoning ordinance, they have to record also the preliminary development.
And it will
So
now be an
yes.
attachment for a permanent record. So I
Correct.
appreciate that part
Permanent
so much too as well. Thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Cassidy, thank you for your hard work on this matter.
Thank you. If you'd like, I could answer some of the questions raised. One of them, people said, how about ADUs, accessory dwelling units? We don't allow ADUs in this code. They're not permitted in this code. There was a thing about, well, how can you require pavement on a 2-acre lot? It doesn't require that. It only applies to smaller lots, so that was not correct. I can't remember what some of the other things were, but if there were some questions, follow-up questions from the comments that were made, I'd be happy to answer those. So thank you.
Frank, the other question was, currently, our minimum lot size is 10,000 square feet, even though there's much smaller everywhere else, and that's why you added your 5, 6, 7.
Yes, that was it. Thank you for reminding me of that. There are several instances where existing lots are smaller than 10,000 square feet. One is that any lot that was created before the town was created, and there are quite a few of those from back in the day, those did not have a 10,000 square foot minimum. Also, if you have a PAD, the reason everybody's doing a PAD is the only way you can get a lot smaller than 10,000 right now is through a PAD. Whereas if you go to every other community throughout the state, the standard traditional single-family residential lot size is definitely smaller than 7,000 square feet. They're more likely in the 6,000, 7,000 square foot range. So this just allows you to permit the normal kind of housing without them having to do a PAD.
And then, Mr. Cassidy, I concur with what Mr. Polk said about how wonderful you are. Thank you for all your time on this. Thank you, staff, for all your time. I know you guys put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into it. I remember us talking early on that we were going to try to make the application for mines an SUP. Did we change our mind on that?
Mr. Mayor, Madam Vice Mayor, we did, I recommended not doing it. I didn't put it in and I don't recommend doing it. And my concern is that if you place that kind of restriction, right now mines aren't even discussed. And obviously a person who has mineral rights is, if you place new requirements on them and basically say you can only do this with an SUP, for example, in the high-intensity industrial zone, you're going to likely get a takings claim from somebody saying, my minerals are in this area here. And so there is an example in I hate to say the town of Florence, they had a terrible time with a mining situation. I just don't want to introduce, so it's still, the current code is silent about mines and the new code is also silent about mines. And that's the way I recommend that you leave it.
Okay.
With that being said, council, the way we'll proceed is any adjustments that have been discussed will be voted individually and seconded. And then at the end, we will encompass all of it together. You good with that, Mr. Legler?
Yes, the 5 will be informal votes, and then you'll do the final vote on adopting the ordinance, and you'll specify which ones were approved in your informal votes. So you've got 5 of them, the 3 that were recommended by Mr. Cassidy, and then the 2 that have been recommended by Dignity Health as modified, the second one as modified. Does that make sense?
I believe so. Vice Mayor, you want to start with yours?
Yes. I'd like to make a motion that we define clinics as a place for the provision of ambulatory health services where patients are kept less than 24 hours.
Clerk, please call the vote.
Councilmember Freund? That passes unanimously, Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that says that skilled nursing facilities are allowed by a conditional use permit in all commercial and industrial zones. Is that a conditional use, a permitted use?
No, it's a conditional use, but it was only in the CG, which is the general commercial, C2 under the current existing code. So CG, CI, and PM. So let me pull that up just so you can see.
That's my motion, is to allow skilled nursing facilities with a CUP in the CG and the other
CI
two. And the other two.
PM. Yes.
I'll second.
Clerk, please call the vote.
That passes unanimously, Mayor.
Thank you, ma'am.
And then my other motion then is to allow manufacturers / factory built homes in all residential zones with the more onerous requirements, permanent foundation, eaves, and a garage with a conditional use permit.
I'll second.
Clerk, please call the vote.
That passes, Mayor.
We are now up to what?
We've done 3, then there are the 2 that were recommended by Dignity Health, and we need to,
I already did Dignity Health.
Thought we already handled that. Is that not correct?
no, those are the,
Yeah.
Mr. Polk, I'm seeing that's
Yes.
covered. So we have those 3
are
covered.
covered.
So now we do the,
It's Frank's motions now, right?
Yes, then I had a few that I wanted you.
pull those up again, please, sir.
I will,
Can we take those as a group or not?
I'm sorry. Here we go. Well, you already took care of the third one. The first one is simply adding the spillage of oil, gasoline, and other hydrocarbons provision to the nuisance.
I make that motion.
I'll second.
Mr. Legler, are we good with that?
that's good.
Call the vote, please.
Can you put that back up, Frank?
That passes, Mayor.
And then I make a motion that stick-built housing is not permitted in the MH zone.
So hang on a second. I would like to speak on that.
Okay.
So, Mr. Cassidy, so what you're saying is we have a manufactured home area that you think it'll be detrimental if someone was to buy 3 lots and put a home on there? Wouldn't I, if I own a manufactured home, wouldn't I welcome a site-built home on my street to maybe up the neighborhood? Wouldn't that make it better?
Mr. Mayor, yes, this one was actually not, I didn't make a recommendation on this. I'm just reporting the recommendation I heard from staff. So I'll defer to staff for that. But the comment that had been made was the concern about a McMansion being built on a combined lot in.
I own a manufactured home and there's a McMansion across the street. I would love it. I think that
Yeah,
would be the
I
greatest
would
thing.
think,
So, if someone wants to make a motion, feel free to, but that's just my clarification. I just wanted to
Okay.
make sure that's what we're.
So we don't have to make a motion on that because it's
No.
already in. Okay.
No, it's not in. It's not. Right now, stick-built in the current draft that's presented to you,
MH zone. So we want to
stick-built
leave
will
it-
be allowed in MH. So if you leave it as is, stick-built will be allowed in MH.
Was there a page 2 to this?
No.
Okay, so we're done.
The earlier page was already in this draft, so I already made these changes in the draft, so you don't have to talk about those.
So with that said, can I make a motion to approve the zoning code with the motions that were just made?
Yes, Madam Vice Chair, or Vice Mayor, we're ready for the main motion.
Okay. So I make a motion to read ordinance number 2024-947 by title only on 2 separate occasions, then place the same on final passage, including the motions made and approved tonight by electronic vote.
I'll second.
Clerk, please call the vote.
Mayor, that passes.
Thank you, ma'am.
Ordinance number 2024-947, an ordinance of the mayor and common council of the town of Prescott Valley, a municipal corporation of Arizona, repealing Chapter 13 zoning in its entirety and adopting by reference a document entitled Repealing and Reenacting Chapter 13 Zoning, providing that all other chapters, articles, and sections of the town code not herein repealed or amended shall remain in full force and effect, providing that if any provision in this ordinance is held invalid by a court of competent jurisdiction, the remaining provision shall not be affected but shall continue in full force and effect, and providing that this ordinance shall be effective 30 days after its passage and approval according to law.
Thank you, ma'am. Next up, 10F, Park Development Design Standards and Guidelines. Mr. Kieran, how are you? Sorry. Get out of
here. Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council, thank you so much for having us here tonight. We're bringing back before you the updated Park Development Design Guidelines and Standards. And with that, we hope that you'll see fit to adopt them through the attached resolution. Last week, we brought you the executive summary for everything that's been updated within the document. And if you have any other questions for me right now, I'd absolutely love to answer them.
Council, we covered this in depth last week, I believe it was. And do we have any additional questions for staff? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to authorize the mayor to sign resolution number 2024-2398, adopting updated the park development design standards and guidelines by electronic vote.
I'll second.
Clerk, please call the vote.
Councilmember Dickinson, thank you. That passes unanimously, Mayor.
Thank you, ma'am. Next up, 10G, reallocation of Fane Bridge, ARPA funds to playground and library projects. Sir?
Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council, what we're bringing to you with this action is the reallocation of ARPA funding that was already originally approved for other projects within this budget year. Since the deadline for ARPA funds to be spent is looming at the end of December, 2 additional projects is what we're asking you to approve through this action. The first one would be a complete tear out and replacement of the ADA fall surfacing here at Mountain Valley Park. As you can tell, the degradation to the existing rubber surfacing that gets heavy usage, as Mountain Valley Park is one of our most highly attended parks within the community. We've been patching it, but patches can only go so far. Through this action, we'll get a brand new tear out and replaced surface with a sealer that will hopefully give us more longevity within the surfacing and add to the benefit of the community. And that is something we'll absolutely be able to get done by December. Secondly, we're asking for you to approve staff pods for in the library. As with everything within the town, we're growing, we're expanding, and adding to that, we need additional space for staff to efficiently and effectively work. What we've identified and what we're seeing up here is just examples of what we could be able to put in place. It'll give us an effective workspace to get some staff into these areas. And with that funding, they're flexible workspaces. We'll have the opportunity to be able to use them for the public in the future whenever redesigns or anything else comes around. And it'll suit a community need for us to be able to provide better oversight within the spaces that they are designated for. And we're hoping that you will see fit to reallocate the funding to these 2 projects.
With that being said, I just want to make one quick comment. The playground equipment that you just showed the picture of, I go there very often with the twins, and I can say it is probably one of the most popular playground items out there. Kids have a great time, and there's no wonder it needs to be replaced. So
Heavily utilized, sir.
heavily utilized. So good job on that, Vice Mayor.
And I'm very excited that we're using Exer Play because they have been very generous in the community, including our Lopez Memorial that we did. They donated to that. So thank you, Exer Play.
Absolutely. They're an amazing community partner and business within the community. And we love to be able to use some of the amazing products that they're able to provide to us.
Any other questions or comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Yes, I have a comment on reference the staff pods. I have been in your offices up there and had a tour of that and have been there for other occasions to speak with staff. And I can see the necessity for these pods. And I think that they would be a great improvement and would provide the space that you're commenting about for privacy, as well as being efficient and getting business done, as well as looking good and looking very nice and making it very professional.
Yes, ma'am.
There's nothing else. I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to approve the reallocation of $75,000 in ARPA funds for the Mountain Valley Spinner Playground structure and the flexible workspace infrastructure projects by electronic vote.
I'll second.
Clerk, please call the vote.
Yes.
That passes unanimously.
Thank you, ma'am. On to item 11, Council, we've reached the end of the agenda. Is there anything that wishes to be brought up at this time? Seeing none. Thanks, everyone, for sticking it out. Have a good night.